In this episode of Dungeon Denizens, we're going to drag the troll from under the bridge. Before the word troll was associated with a particular monster, it referred to any member of the trollary, which in Old Norse meant a magical place or creatures. Anything associated with the supernatural, although with a malignant connotation. In modern Swedish, trollary simply means magic. The first instance of the word troll in English dates from the 1610s, with an isolated use in the 14th century. By this point, the word had attained its modern sense of an inhuman monster. In Scandinavian traditions, troll referred to a giant evil being not of the human race, and was a part of the Jotun, or giants, similar to the Titans of Greek mythology. We'll get into them in a moment. In Norwegian tradition, however, trolls were known as the Huldra folk. These were trollari who had the outward appearance of humans, with blonde hair and a cow-like tail that they sometimes hid beneath clothing when they weren't traipsing about the tundra naked. Though they were not inherently malicious, they had no concept of human suffering or pain. Despite, or maybe because of this, they desired above all else to become equal to humans, interbreeding if needs be. The beautiful females, known as Huldras, would ensnare men with songs similar to mermaids or sirens. These unfortunate men would then be entranced into being playthings or pets for the Huldra, returning sometimes years later with no recollection of their imprisonment. Even today, there is a place called Myrdal, near Voss, in western Norway, where you may hear the Huldra song on the waters of the Sognefjord. The males were a decided departure from the Huldras. Known as Huldus, they were brutish and violent, although not quite to the depths of depravity associated with later trolls. They were considered great farmers, with superior livestock and yields than nearby human settlements. These Huldra folk were members of the Ra, meaning keeper or warden, and were one of several subtypes, including the aquatic Sjora, identified with mermaids, and the subterranean Bergsra, who occupied caves and harassed miners. Hulders had an affinity for charcoal burners, and would watch over charcoal kilns while the human laborers slept. Later Christian versions of these myths introduced an origin of the Huldra folk. A tale recounts how a woman had washed only half of her children when God came to her cottage. Ashamed of the dirty ones, she hid them. God decreed that those she had hidden from him would be hidden from humanity. They became the Huldra folk. This Christian addition also made the Huldras desire to be wedded to a human male, at which time their tail would fall off, and they would become a mortal human. If this did not occur, they would become wizened, ugly, and, strangely enough, less angry. The Jotun trolls were a different matter altogether. The Jotun themselves were a race of giants locked in war against the gods, and the trolls were their descendants. They were large, oafish, ugly, and tusked. Occasionally they were cyclopic, and the more wretched of them would have multiple limbs, especially heads. Sometimes a group of trolls would share one eye between them, passing them around like Graia of Greek myth. One instance of a particularly nasty Jotun troll had 15 heads. However, most were roughly humanoid in general shape, but with monstrous proportions, huge and hideous. These trolls live within lone boulders, large stones, and mountains. Beings of stone, when they were exposed to sunlight, they would return to stone. As Christianity came to prominence, and churches replaced thanes, often nearby standing stones were thought to house trolls, or in some cases, actually had once been trolls, turned to rock. Their nemesis shifted from the Norse gods to the Christians themselves. And yet one of the strongest traditions in Northern Europe is the erection of massive stone structures by supernatural beings. Gothic cathedrals, churches, and castles, specified and unspecified, are often attributed to the efforts of devils or trolls, usually in exchange for the life or soul of either the contractor or the first person to enter the completed edifice. One such church in Kalundborg was being built by a man named Esbern Snare. It's a great name. The work was slow and difficult, and a passing troll named Finn offered his services. Esbern accepted, under the circumstances that he must learn the troll's name before the church was completed. Otherwise, the troll would take his heart and his eyes. After just a few days, the troll had completed nearly everything, except half a pillar. Esbern was so distraught, he went and lied down on the Ulshosh, a great mound, where he had heard a troll woman singing. "Lie still, baby mine, tomorrow cometh Finn, father thine, and giveth thee Esbern Snare's eyes and heart to play with." Esbern ran back to the church and named the troll Finn. Finn, being quite upset, smashed the pillar he had not yet completed, and this accounts for the 3.5 pillars of the church to this day. Many such stories exist concerning the interaction between trolls and humans, such as the Askeladden, a series of Norwegian fairy tales surrounding the Ash Lad. Here is the story of Askeladden and the eating match. A farmer with 3 sons planned to cut wood in a forest he owned in order to pay off his debts. The oldest son went into the forest and encountered a troll. Frightened, the oldest son ran home. The second son went into the forest and was chased off by the troll as well. However, before the youngest son went into the forest, he asked his father for food. The father gave him a bit of cheese in a knapsack. When the youngest son went into the forest to cut the wood, the troll appeared just as it had for the previous brothers. When the troll threatened him, the boy pulled out the cheese.
"Do you see this stone?"
he asked the troll, and squeezed it until the whey came out. When he threatened to deal with the troll as he had with the stone, the troll offered to help him with the woodcutting. The troll suggested that the boy come home with him for a tasty meal. Then he went to build up the fire and sent the boy for water, pointing to 2 buckets larger than the boy. The boy realized he could not carry the huge buckets.
"These buckets are too small,"
said the boy.
"I can fetch the spring instead."
The troll, not wanting an entire spring, which would put out the fire, decided to exchange chores.
"Why don't you tend the fire while I fetch the water?"
said the troll. The troll brought the water and proceeded to make porridge. When the porridge was finished, the boy suggested an eating match. The troll and the boy ate as much as they could. However, the boy had put his knapsack underneath his shirt and was pouring more porridge into the bag than into his mouth. When the bag was full, he cut a hole in it and continued to eat. The troll finally said he could eat no more. The boy, who was still going, suggested that the troll cut a hole in his stomach, explaining,
"Then you can eat as much as you like. It doesn't hurt much."
The troll did so and died, and the boy took his gold and silver and paid off the family debt. Of course, the most famous troll story is likely Three Billy Goats Gruff. The story introduces 3 male goats, sometimes identified as the youngster, father, and grandfather, but more often described as brothers. In any case, there is almost no grass left for them to eat near where they live, so they must cross the river to get to Satyr, a meadow or hillside on the other side of a stream in order to eat and fatten themselves up. To do so, however, they must first cross a bridge under which lives a fearsome and hideous troll who is so territorial that he eats anyone who tries to cross the bridge. The smallest billy goat is the first to cross and is stopped abruptly by the troll, who threatens to
"Gobble him up."
However, the little goat convinces the troll to wait for his big brother to come across because he is larger and would make for a more gratifying feast. The greedy troll agrees and lets the smallest goat cross. The medium-sized goat passes next. He is more cautious than his brother, but is also stopped by the troll and given the same threat. The second billy goat is allowed to cross as well, after he tells the troll to wait for the biggest billy goat, because he is the largest of the 3. The third billy goat then gets on the bridge and is stopped by the hungry troll, who threatens to devour him. However, the third billy goat challenges him and knocks the troll off the bridge with his horns. The troll falls into the stream and is carried away by the current. From then on, the bridge is safe, and all 3 goats are able to go to the rich fields around the summer farm in the hills, and they all live happily ever after. Collected by Peter Christian Asbjornsen and Jørgen Moe in their Norske Folkeeventyr, and first published between 1841 and 1844, it gives one of the clearest physical descriptions of such a troll, with a nose as long as a broom handle and eyes the size of pie pans. Despite the varied nature, appearance, and mannerisms of the ancient trolls, by the dawn of the 20th century, the idea of a large, monstrous humanoid with limited intellect, horrible appetite, and which turns to stone and sunlight was relatively cemented, even if the magical element had been abandoned in favor of a physical form. This physical form came to its greatest literary representation in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, where the mountain trolls Tom, Bert, and William debate, in a thick Cockney accent, the best method of roasting dwarves to such length that they are caught by the morning sun. Tolkien, being one of the foremost experts on Anglo-Saxon and Scandinavian traditions, emphasized the fondness of trolls for meat in general, and human flesh in particular, as a common thread throughout stories of trolls, and their great strength is typically destructive in its focus. Such folkloric trolls are most often depicted as being armed with axes or clubs, emphasizing the threat of the brutal, if unsophisticated, violence that they pose, such as the animalistic cave trolls of the later Lord of the Rings trilogy. Poul Anderson's 1961 novel 3 Hearts and 3 Lions, a pastiche of a variety of myths and folklores, presented trolls as tall, skinny humanoids with long noses, similar to 3 billy goats' gruff, and rubbery skin, an ability to regenerate, and a weakness to fire, as opposed to the Scandinavian tradition of fear of lightning. This incarnation would be elevated in 1974 with its inclusion in Dungeons & Dragons' earliest form as a monstrous foe, and has been a staple of the game and all its descendants ever since. In 1959, Danish woodcutter Thomas Dam debuted his troll doll, which would become a popular craze in the early 1960s and repeated fads in the 1970s and 1990s. Also known as Dam dolls, Good Luck trolls, and Gonk trolls, the small sculpted figures had long upswept hair and an ugly yet cute design. These trolls have little to do with folklore nor literature, yet were extremely well known, even before the 2016 animated film. Since the 1980s, fantasy literature began playing with the concept of a troll as a being. In Tad Williams' Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy, trolls are fairly small in stature, riding goats in their native mountains. Their own name for themselves is the Canuck, and their society is a complex tribal one, resembling indigenous Arctic and subarctic groups as much as anything from folklore. Terry Pratchett's trolls of Discworld are no more threatening than other species, with their great strength typically channeled into manual labor and working as bouncers at the city's inns. As stone-based creatures, they eat rocks and cannot digest living things. Their silicon-based brains conduct poorly unless the temperature is very cold, leading to their general perception as intellectually challenged, but they have personalities and even occasionally appear as protagonists. In Neil Gaiman's short story titled Trollbridge, the troll seeks not flesh, but rather something more ephemeral. The life, measured in some indefinable sense, of the child who crosses his path. The boy convinces the troll to let him go, and eat him later once he has lived more fully, a scene repeated in the boy's teenage years. Finally, as a grown man, the protagonist returns to the bridge, mourning his life of lost chances and offering it to the troll. As the troll devours his life, the two exchange bodies, and the protagonist retreats from society under the bridge while the troll walks away into the world, whistling as it goes. Spoiler alert. Nancy Farmer's fantasy trilogy, consisting of Sea of Trolls, The Land of the Silver Apples, and The Islands of the Blessed, is set in a world of Norse mythology, where two young children are kidnapped by Vikings and taken to the kingdom of King Ivar the Boneless and his half-troll queen. Although the trolls seem initially threatening, they are also members of a sophisticated society who play chess and throw banquets, and the troll queen herself befriends the two children. In J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, maybe you've heard of it, trolls are again large, violent, and stupid creatures who communicate with a series of grunts, but as a result are the subject of some debate regarding their proper treatment and rights in the wizarding world. The troll becomes the first fantastical monster that Harry and his friends face. In a story where magic is revealed to be lying beneath the mundane at all times, the troll as a foe harkens back through much of folklore to find a creature rooted in myth. Recent reinterpretations of the ancient Beowulf have tried assigning Mead Hall invader Grendel as a troll given his apparent size, violence, and carnivorous behaviors, but this is unsupported directly in the text, which leaves the identity and species of Grendel fairly ambiguous. The Norwegian film The Troll Hunter takes the form of pretended found footage sent anonymously to a film company telling the story of three students filming their unofficial investigation into a man they suspect to be killing bears. He turns out to be a government-employed troll hunter, killing giant, violent, and sometimes multi-headed trolls whose existence has been concealed by the government. These trolls are animalistic and lacking in intelligence, with the film emphasizing their natural behavior and providing a pseudo-scientific gloss for their intolerance of sunlight. Disney's animated film Frozen, which is replete with Scandinavian folklore and imagery, features small, benevolent stone trolls which are sought out by royalty for their knowledge of magic and who enthusiastically care for the male lead, Kristoff. The Warcraft series of games developed their own troll characteristics, being strong, hunched, tribal creatures with enormous tusks and a decidedly Jamaican accent. These trolls are members of the Horde, an honorable collective of outcast fantasy races, and are renowned for their throwing ability and strength. They are cartoonishly elongated, with green to blue skin which is unaffected by the sun. The trolls of the Warcraft universe are one of the oldest races native to Azeroth. Their long history and scattered population has resulted in a vast and very diverse race. The four major troll ethnicities include forest, jungle, ice, and desert. They primarily worship animal spirits, but voodoo and shamanism are also well known among their race. The era of troll domination came to an end when the Night Elves discovered magic and used it to drive back the empires before the Sundering shattered them, resulting in a perpetual decline into darkness. And recently, Guillermo del Toro released The Troll Hunters, an animated series on Netflix that utilizes many of the troll concepts. The sun turns them to stone, They have idiosyncratic appearances, and the hidden world, which Del Toro returns to calling Troll Market, as he did with the Hellboy franchise. The troll has become ubiquitous. The list just keeps going on and on. There is a statue of a troll beneath a bridge in Seattle. Countless films and TV shows, from the low-budget troll horror films to the made-for-TV The Boy Who Loved Trolls. Online troublemakers are known as trolls, and similarly are unmoved by our pleas and prayers. Ranging from ignorant supernatural beings to ogreish carnivore giants, and back to innocent creatures, trolls have been a mainstay of European-derived fantasy and will likely continue to occupy a place in the forefront of human imagination for centuries to come. Thanks for listening.